Hilchos Hatumos Perek Achad Asar, the laws of the remaining primary sources of impurity, chapter 11. Today is going to be a very, very important chapter. It deals with some of the fundamental rules of the ability of Tumah to pass from one food to another. Now, we've been talking about a lot of this in recent chapters, but never in an organized fashion. Today, the Rambam puts it all in order. The power of different foods at different levels to become impure. So the Rambam first begins with a rule that I've already said a few times, just again in explaining the chapters, but here the Rambam says it clearly. Halacha Aleph, kol makom shenemar or shenoimar ba'oichlin, pasol. Whenever we use the word pasol about food, disqualified typically it means. But over here, in context of impurity, it means hu sheyiyeh ha'oichel atzmai tameh, v'lo yitameh oichel acher. It means that it itself, the food itself, becomes impure, but it cannot transmit impurity to other food. Think about it. You have ba'ochel acher. If it touches other food, it's totally pure. So let's imagine this was we have over here a breakfast today, yeah? Huh? Yeah, no, I told you, but it's never been clear in a halacha. Here the Rambam says, if you have food, yeah, there's breakfast here, the berekas, whatever it is, you're holding it. Let's say it's pasul. That means that it's impure, but if you take the same berekas and you touch another berekas, the second one's going to stay totally pure. That's what pasul means. Impurity stops with it. However, wherever we say the word tameh means not only is it impure, but it will also make others impure. So now, knowing that, let's look at this. This is going to be just a very important chart. You can use this chart to know across the laws of impurity when it comes to food. If it's chulin you're dealing with, totally regular foods, it's not holy, it's not truma, nothing, just regular produce, regular stuff. So if it's rishain, that means if it touched an av, if food touched a primary source of impurity, tameh umetame, it itself becomes impure, and it's also able to make others impure. Hasheni pasol v'lo metame. But the second degree, it itself is disqualified, but it will not go further. If it touches a shlishi, or a third step away from the impurity, the shlishi remains completely pure. The ein sheni eisa shlishi b'chulin. Second degree cannot make third degree in chulin. As long as all the foods you're dealing with are regular unholy, so the one that touched, let's say, the animal carcass, okay? So here's the animal carcass, that's the av. Touches a piece of bread, that's rishain. Touches a potato, that's sheni. Potato touches a carrot, the carrot is totally fine, because it's the third step away, and third step away is totally pure. How do we know that there's a possibility of extending even to a sheni? Where do you see in Torah that it can go two steps? Regular food. So the Rambam says, look at the following verse. Shenemar, it says in the pasuk, this is talking about the shratzim. Chapter 4 we had about the sherets, the rodents that have a special impurity. So the pasuk says, V'chol kli cheres asher yipel mehem el toichai, any pottery utensil from which one of the rodents falls inside, koil asher b'soicha yitma, anything inside it becomes tameh. So now let's examine a case. Let's make this practical. Yeah, nimtza hasheretz av. The mouse, let's call it the rodent, is the av hatumah. That's the primary source of impurity. Falls into a pottery jug. The pottery utensil which the mouse fell into now becomes first degree. What are we saying? Yeah? Anything that's inside of it. It means there's other things inside of it. There's food. The food is two steps away. The rodent made the jug impure, and the jug makes the food impure. Torah says it becomes impure. So here we see a second degree is impure. Now, the argument could be made, as the Talmud does suggest, that maybe when a rodent falls into a pottery utensil, the whole thing becomes what's called malei tum'ah. The whole thing is full of impurity. So maybe the reason that the food is impure is not because of a two-step process, not because the rodent makes the pottery jug impure and the jug makes the food impure. Maybe the whole thing is considered to be one big entity of impurity. So the Gemara proves that that's not the case. The Rambam doesn't get into it. The Gemara has a whole, it shows you from the verses that that's not true. We're actually looking at it as two steps. And so assuming that premise, that we're looking at it as two steps, we can see here clearly that there's an example of a sheni becoming impure. It won't become impure so powerful to make other things impure, but it itself will become impure. V'chein, similarly, a second example, just the same concept, okay? So this is now, instead of a jug, it's an oven. Sheret shenafa la'avir tanur, if a rodent, it's called a mouse, falls into the airspace of an oven, hapas shniya shehatanur rishon, the bread that's baking in the oven is now sheni, because the rodent makes the oven impure, and the oven makes the bread impure. Halacha gimel. This was about chulin. Now let's check out the next column. The next column is truma, and we're going to see that truma extends one more level. Harishin v'hasheni shebetruma. If you have truma food that's on either first level or second level, tmeim umetamin, they themselves are impure and they pass it on one level. Hashlishi pasul v'lei metame. At the third degree, it becomes impure and it cannot pass it on further. Ve'ein shlishi oiser revi betruma. Even if you have a loaf of bread, let's say, from truma, which touched grapes of truma, which touched olives of truma, and now the olives of truma touching something else of truma, at that point it doesn't become impure at all. How do we know that there's a possibility of third degree when it comes to truma? So here the Rambam incorporates something from yesterday. Shenemar, it says in the verse, Uva hashemesh v'toheir. This is talking about a person who's called a Balkari. So he experienced the seminal emission, and that's him being a rishon, because the semen itself is called the av. He becomes a rishon. He goes to the mikveh, and what do we say? That whenever you go to the mikveh, you got to wait till evening. The sun sets, then he becomes impure. Then he becomes pure. Excuse me. The achar yechal min hakadashim, and then he can eat from sacrificial meat. Now over here, even though kadashim usually means sacrificial meat, it's clearly meaning truma in this context. That's again, accept that as a premise. So, what's happening over here? Nimtza tvul yoim asur bitruma ad sheyariv shimshei. Based on this verse, a person who went to the mikveh is called a tvul yoim, waiting for sunset. He cannot eat truma. V'im nagaba pasla. If he would touch it, he'd be disqualifying it. And what do we know about a tvul yoim? We learned yesterday, tvul yoim kesheni l'tumahu. Tvul yoim is like a second degree. So if a second degree person makes truma disqualified, what does that tell you? You now have a second degree making a third degree. And so in truma we now have another level that's added over here. Halacha daled, then it goes to sacrificial meat. This is the strictest. Meat of sacrifices that became impure. Touched one degree, touched a second degree, third degree, even a fourth. So at a third degree, will also make another one impure. Haravi pasal ve'eina mitame. The fourth one is disqualified and will not make anything impure further. Ve'ein revi ya'isa chamishi la'ilam. Fourth can never make fifth degree ever. Whatever is learned in the Torah from the verses, that's the maximum we can extend it. We can't go past whatever Torah teaches. So if we have a verse for a next level, we'll make a next level. If not, no next level. I was just looking yesterday. There was a man, quite a famous Jew now. He wrote the chumash that's called Shaila Moira. It's a very easily accessible chumash for like Hebrew speakers. It explains Rashi very, very well. And he had a correspondence with the Rebbe. He made an interesting book in 1964-65. He made a book that's called Mapat HaTahara, the map of purity, because the laws of impurity are so complicated. So he wanted Israel. Yeah. Rabbi Shmuel Weinfeld, his name is. So he put out a map.
It's from the Bnei
Could be. Yeah. You see his name. You see his name in like many books. You know who he is.
If it's from the
He printed it's a very thin book.
Weinfeld.
Yeah. It's called Mapat HaTahara. And it basically summarizes in very easy language all the laws of purity and impurity. And then attached to the cover is a map. Yeah. It's like open the cover and then it folds out this massive map. And he has like all the levels of impurity. And he writes, like the Rambam over here says, like he sets it up in a way that the maximum is revi. There's only fourth. There's avatuma, first, second, third degree, fourth degree, and that's it. So he sent it to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe sends him back a couple of comments. So it was common practice when the Rebbe got a book. He liked to write comments on the beginning and end of the book many times. So the Rebbe writes to him, you forgot a whole level of impurity. You have to add the fifth level for para aduma, chatat. There is one case where it goes to a fifth level for para aduma. And the Rebbe said, here we see another example, how you have to be so careful, even when you think you're just copying down the words of the Rambam. The Rambam writes, Revi cannot make Chamishi ever. But he's talking about it in this context. You have to remember all the context and stick in the para aduma also. So it's just important to know that.
The person who's sprinkling
the water of the para aduma, the water has the power to transmit impurity to even further.
It's the water and
the water and the ash. So just that interesting thing that you should know. The Rambam over here is talking about food. That's why he doesn't say anything more, because paradumas and that's not food. In food, you only have four levels. Anyway, ominayin lashlishi b'kodesh seutame. So now we have to know verses every time. You can't just say things. You have to have proof in the Torah. So we proved that second degree chulin becomes impure. We proved that third degree truma becomes impure. What about third degree kodesh and fourth degree kodesh? So first, third degree. Third degree says the Rambam. Shenemar, it says in the verse. Let me just bring it up here. V'habasar asher yiga b'chol tameh lo ye'achil. Basar, again, in context, is referring to sacrificial meat. So sacrificial meat touches anything impure, cannot be eaten. Now, we just established that one of the things that's called impure, ukvar kara hakosov lasheni tameh. Second degree stuff is already considered impure. Shenemar kol asher b'soicha yitma. The verse before about the pottery utensil. Or here's the picture of it. Second degree stuff. That's called impure. So if Torah over here says that if sacrificial meat touches anything impure, it cannot be eaten, that means it includes sheni. That means that sacrificial meat that touched second degree impurity itself becomes impure and has to be burnt. Okay, that is now shlishi. We've proven the third degree. What about fourth degree? How do we know that? So here the Rambam says, as the Gemara does, we don't have a source in a pasuk for this, but we have what's called a kal v'chomer. Kal v'chomer, you learn it from a fortiori logic. It's one of the principles in Torah that if you have a kal v'chomer, you can derive new laws. Kal v'chomer means if a stringent law applies in a lenient case, so certainly that stringent law applies in a stringent case. Uma mechusar kippurim. If a mechusar kippurim means somebody who's waiting to bring his sacrifice, shehu mutar bitruma asur b'kodesh, he is permitted or she is permitted to eat truma, but they cannot eat sacrificial meat till they bring their sacrifice. Hashlishi shehu pasal bitruma, so third degree stuff, which is disqualified when it comes to truma, not permitted. Certainly, is it not logic that it should also transfer to a fourth level? If something which is permitted for truma is forbidden for kodesh, so if it's forbidden for truma, for sure it should be forbidden for kodesh. Aval hachamishi tahar, but not fifth. We don't have a source for going another level. One more level, that's it. After that, we're not going to go. There's a whole discussion on this logic. It's not so simple. It involves the core principles of the kal v'chomer, which is called dayoi. Dayoi means we don't extend the logic past its original limitation. It's a whole thing. But for now, we're trusting the Rambam. This is how we know Revi'i b'Kodesh. Okay. Halacha hey. Bisar taiva. Bisar taiva literally means meat that you eat out of desire. But it's halachic code for chulin meat. Chulin meat, because Torah, when it describes the idea of eating meat, it says ki ta'aveh nafshecha, when your soul will desire to eat meat. So, regular meat, let's call it, okay? Afal pishu tahar, even though it's pure, totally pure, didn't become any degree of impurity. Gazru alav sheyiyeh kishlishi letuma, they gave it a status quo of third degree impurity, mitame asa kodesh ve'enei peis las truma, in the sense that it makes kodesh impure. Not truma, but kodesh yes. V'yirah Eli says that Rambam, what's the reason for this? Why make any meat considered third degree impurity? It seems to me, says the Rambam, shalei gazru alav ella kedei shalei ya'arvu ha'am oisayim sara kodesh. Everything was about keeping distance, you know? The rabbis didn't want people to mix regular meat with holy meat, which could cause many mistakes and many inadvertencies. People might think it's regular meat and it's really holy meat, eating it in a state of impurity. So you know what? We just say, keep away all regular meat from your holy meat. Just keep it in separate places and don't mix them up. If foods are connected through a liquid. So let's just take classic matzah ball soup, all right? What do you have here? You have a soup. What's connecting the two matzah balls over here? The liquid, right? They're not touching, but they're attached to the liquid. It says that they are considered connected with regards to transmitting tumah of foods. So we saw this already in short. We'll see it in the next set of laws at length. If food becomes impure, it can only make other things impure if it's the size of a kibetza, an egg size. So what happens if you have two matzah balls that are the size of less than a kibetza? The fact that they're connected through the liquid makes them considered one big entity. Now, v'hadavar safek, the matter is in doubt, im hin chashuvin keguf echad, limnes bahen rishain v'sheni ushlishi. Yes, they're considered one entity for making others impure, but are they considered so one entity to be considered just one degree in terms of the degrees? Meaning, let's say, if a rodent, okay, will touch one of them, so since they're attached, now do they both become a rishain? Or yes, they're one entity, but they're two separate steps. So if the rodent touches this one becomes a rishain, that one becomes a sheni. That's the suffix. That's the doubt. I guess the logic is that the liquid connects them in a way that they can team up for others, but not in terms of themselves. In terms of themselves, they each absorb it at a separate time. But that's the doubt. Anyway.
So this is the suffix.
This is a suffix. So now if they touch another thing, so if it's truma, of course it becomes a shlishi. That's no problem. But then what happens if this is the next thing? So if they were both initially rishain, then it could become impure at one more level. If not, then it can become impure at another level. That's the doubt.
How much is a kapitza again?
About 2 ounces. They say it's double a kazayas. So if a kazayas is about 1 ounce, so a kibitza is about 2 ounces. Halacha zayin hasheni shebechulin. Okay, let's go back to this chart. Till now, that Rambam was just talking about if all the things in the row were all the same. If chulin touches chulin, if truma touches truma, if kodesh touches kodesh. Now let's cross over the lines. What happens if you have a sheni bechulin, okay? That means it's a second degree regular stuff. So if it touches other regular stuff, we said it's going to be in the green. But what if this guy, second of chulin, touches truma? And truma is able to go to a third degree. So even though it's coming from chulin, which cannot go to second degree, to third degree, but since the result is truma, it does become impure. Hasheni shebechulin poisel achle truma. Second degree chulin will make a third degree of truma. V'oisa isan shlishi. Yeah, it makes them into a shlishi. V'im naga b'mashke chulin. If the sheni shebechulin touches chulin liquids, then even though again, typically, second degree doesn't go to third degree, but what's the law of liquid? It always jumps back up. Timan. It makes them impure back to rishon. Needless to say, if it touches truma liquid or kodesh liquid, of course, it makes everything disqualified. Tameh, rising it to the level of rishon. Halacha ches, same thing if we go from this row. You have third degree truma, hashlishi shebetruma, shenaga ba'ichle kodesh, it touches kodesh food. So since kodesh is able to become fourth degree, so even if the source is coming from truma, which cannot, doesn't matter, paslan. It makes them disqualified. V'nasu revi, they become a revi. If the third level truma touches kodesh liquid, it jumps back up, becomes a rishon. But if, let's say, third degree truma will touch truma liquid, harehu tahar, it cannot go past third degree. It's pure. If fourth degree kodesh touches other liquid of kodesh, it doesn't jump back up. It stays fully pure. Halacha tes chulin shenasu al taras atruma. What if somebody was trying to treat his chulin at the same level of truma? This is very common practice in those days, that people would say, you know what? I know chulin can be eaten in a state of impurity or whatever. I want to treat my chulin like truma. That was your attitude. Why? Probably because you were a Kohen. You had truma coming into your house. You didn't want to get confused. Like, you know what? No different standards. One unique standard, catering to the highest common denominator. We're going to make chulin at the level of truma. So then, hashlishi shebahen pasol kitruma. It attains the status of truma, and third degree stuff could become disqualified.
Question: can you do that?
Yeah, it was actually considered midat chasidut.
Yeah.
It was considered piety. Yeah. V'im naga b'kodesh, but if it touches kodesh, eino yesei revi, it will not make it fourth degree because it's only altaras truma. It's not being treated like sacrificial meat. Va'afilu mashke kodesh eino paisel. It can't even make liquid of kodesh, which again, liquid is more vulnerable to become a rishon. Not here. The chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh. If somebody wanted to treat his chulin highest level, like sacrificial meat, hashlishi shebohen torah kechulin. Nevertheless, the third degree is not going to be considered impure like kodesh would. It's going to be actually like chulin. What is the reason? Because chulin shenasu al taras hakodesh doesn't become like kodesh. Why? It was very, very uncommon. Many people would do chulin al taras truma. Not many people would do chulin al taras kodesh, so we didn't have to be so strict about it, and therefore for laws of impurity, it stops at sheni like regular chulin does. Halacha yud. Ha'oichel revi shebekaidesh. Ha'oichel, not oichel. If somebody, a person eats fourth degree kaidesh. So this is what we said before, the fourth degree becomes impure. What if you eat it? Asur le'lecha lesa kaidesh. So even though technically the fourth degree cannot make you impure, because that will be fifth degree, but the rabbi said you can no longer eat sacrificial meat till you go to the mikveh. Umutar liga b'kaidesh ve'enei paisla, but you can touch it. Touching it, nothing will happen. But eating it, yeah, no, that's a problem. Afilu tavshel shenis arev b'kaidesh. Even if it's a big soup, that some sacrificial meat got mixed into it. Ve'en by kazayis b'chdei achilas pras. Even if you'll eat the size of 3 eggs worth of the soup, you won't get a kazayis, an olive size of sacrificial meat. There isn't enough to spread around on that proportion. It still shouldn't be eaten. Ela b'chamishi, only 5th level. If it's 5th level, then you could eat it, because it's pure, as we explained. Halacha Yud Aleph, ha'oichel shlishi shebetruma atzmam, oishel chulin shenasu al taras hatruma. If somebody eats a shlishi, 3rd degree of truma, or 3rd degree of chulin that was being treated like truma, which we said before also becomes a shlishi. At this point, he becomes a little bit impure. He cannot eat any more truma till he goes to the mikveh. But you can touch it. It's fine. This stringent is only imposed for eating, not for touching. Same as kodesh, same as truma. When do we say that? If it was an actual 3rd degree, truma food itself, the olives, the grapes, the loaf of bread, that's actual truma. Avol tavshel shenis arva by truma, but if it was a soup that some truma got mixed into, some truma spices, let's say, in ein sham kazayis b'chdei achilas pras, if the proportion is, there is not an olive-sized portion relative to every pras, every about 3 eggs. You can eat that soup the same way you can touch the truma. Unlike we said, but when it comes to Kaidesh, the rabbis were even stricter. Truma, they're not so strict. Halacha Yud Beis ha'oichel shlishi shebetruma. Oishel chulin shenasu al taras truma. Same case. A person consumes 3rd degree truma or 3rd degree chulin that's being treated like truma. Afal pisha hu tar linegias truma. Even though we said before you can touch the truma. Harehu kesheni li'inyan Kaidesh, for sacrificial meat, he goes even up a level. We call him a sheni. Shetaras truma tuma hi'etz Kaidesh. If somebody is pure for truma, sacrificial people look down at him. That's like, you're not pure enough for us. He's impure for Kaidesh. And therefore he cannot touch Kaidesh. But if you would eat 3rd degree chulin, it's being treated like Kaidesh, which we said before, actually doesn't have status of shlishi. Harei hutar, it remains pure, and the person remains pure, he can eat Kaidesh. Nothing, no 3rd degree can go to a 4th degree in Kaidesh unless it's actual sacrificial meat. Not you. You ate the meat. You ate truma. You have no problem. Halacha Yud Gimel kol Kaidesh ha'amur be'inyan tumas eichlin u'mashkin. We've been using the word Kaidesh for a long time. I kept on translating it as what? Sacrificial meat. But really, says the Rambam, whenever we say the word Kaidesh, in terms of these impurity of food and drink, hu Kaidesh mekudash ha-mekudashim. It's actual holy food, meaning the food itself is holy, and it's been sanctified. Kigain, for example, b'sar kotche kotchim, b'sar kotchim kalim. Meat of higher level and lower level sacrifices. The chalosh toido, the kikei nazir, the loaves of bread, and the wafers brought as part of the Thanksgiving offering and for the nazir. Sharishchat alei nazevach, where the sacrifice brought with them was already slaughtered, so the bread became holy. The hamenachis shekadshul bikli, flour offerings that were sanctified in a vessel. Ushtei alechem v'lechem apanim shekarbon b'tanur, the 2 breads of Shavuos, the 12 breads of every week, as long as they crusted in the oven, they were already fully baked. But if you have these breads of the Nazir and Toida, where their sacrifice wasn't offered yet, wasn't slaughtered yet, flour offerings that were not yet sanctified in a vessel, they have the status not of Kaidesh, but they're not chulin, because you've already put them aside, they're like truma, which has 3rd degree but not 4th degree. Yudalad, hachala, the habikurim, the tashlume truma v'chumsha. Chala, the dough that you remove, right, for the Kohen. Bikurim is the first fruits. Payments that you made for eating truma by mistake, along with the 5th that you have to add. All these things, harehin kitruma, they're like regular truma. And they have 3rd degree again, not 4th degree. Halacha tezvav, hatevel v'hameduma v'gidule truma. Tevel means untithed stuff. Meduma means if it's mixed with truma. Gidule truma means you took a truma fruit or vegetable, you replanted it, and now it grew fruit. That's called gidulin. The rabbis consider it to be like truma. Umaiser sheni, second tithe. The isa hatvula lechala, and a dough that's tevel means it hasn't had the chala yet removed. Harehin kechulin, they're considered like chulin, which means v'harishain tamei bahen, v'sheni pasol, ve'ein bahen shlishi. So like classic chulin. First degree is totally impure. Second degree is disqualified. Third degree is pure. No shlishi. Halacha tazayin kol davar shevadoi metame asachulin min atayram. Anything which, if you're certain about its impure status, it will transmit its impurity to chulin. Gazru al sveikai bechulin hatvulin lechala. So if a doubtful scenario touches a dough which was obligated in chala before taking the chala, the dough becomes impure, which means the following: you must keep on processing that dough in a state of purity. You can't assume it's all impure. You must use pure utensils and everything like that, because you're not supposed to actually make things impure actively, even if it's a doubt. You must take chala from it. But you cannot eat it, because maybe it's impure challah. You cannot burn it, maybe it's pure. So it's all rabbinic over here. And therefore you leave the challah hanging in the balance, don't do anything with it, and that's the way we treat a dough which was touched by a doubtful impurity.